What's going on? Sean and Ev here with SEVelocity, episode 5, I believe, of the weekly podcast. Lots to talk about in the NBA this week. A couple things we covered with a few reaction videos throughout the week. If you haven't seen those, check it out. But without further ado, Sean, you got anything you want to talk about before we get into it?
Yeah, welcome back to the show, everyone. Me and Ev, we're really excited to talk about what happened this past week and the upcoming games we have. Like, what a treat! Well, first of all, I gotta say it's really interesting how the West Coast they cleaned up all their series like that, and now, but we're getting a real treat in terms of like competition on the East Coast. Been a while since we had some of that. About the East Side. Yeah, I'm just ready to get into it. So much to talk about, so much anticipation.
Yeah,
Basketball playoffs, best time of the year. I like to say every week.
I believe the last 10 to 15 years, it's either been Steph or LeBron or both in the finals every year. So this is the first year that neither of them will be there, and we have, um, a bunch of stars. I mean, you got anyone from Giannis and Chris Middleton to KD, James Harden, and Kyrie if he returns, and Embiid, Tobias Harris. Ben Simmons or Trey Young even and John Collins to Paul George and now Terrence Mann, and potentially what other team am I missing? Devin Booker and Chris Paul, of course. A bunch of
Oh
guys that
yeah,
haven't been to the finals yet, ever. I'm pretty sure. If I'm not mistaken, I mean KD's been to a few, of course.
yeah. Kyrie,
Uh,
Kyrie's been to two.
Kyrie as well, but everyone else
Yeah,
has been
yeah.
inexperienced.
It's essentially new teams to the finals. We could say that because there are some guys here and there who have been there in past teams.
Now, before we talk about specific games, um, is there any specific matchup you want specifically in the finals?
Hmm, I'm gonna say, or it's gonna be the I'm gonna say I want the Clippers versus the Sixers in the finals for one particular reason. The reason why I didn't say the Suns is because it will break my heart so much because you know how much I praise Chris Paul and certainly believe he's undervalued just because of the fact that he doesn't have a ring when compared to like all-time great point guards. But but I'm rooting for the Sixers to win all the way.
Yeah,
So that's why I'm saying it would be much easier on my heart if the Clippers go because I have no problem rooting against them.
I mean, as you remember, I predicted the Nets versus the Suns, so I wouldn't mind that being the actual setup
If that
because
happens, I'm definitely rooting for the Suns.
I agree. But now I'm at a point where, with the Nets being a little bit hurt, I would like to see the Bucks versus the Suns. Would be fun to see Giannis and Chris Middleton versus Chris Paul and Booker because they're completely different aspects. One relies on a lot of three-point shooting and distribution. The other ones rely on pick and rolls. So I would like that. So without further ado, let's talk about the first topic. Let's talk about Game 6 of the Nets versus the Bucks. The Nets took one.
And what did I predict? I predicted that the Bucks were gonna win Game 6 and force a Game 7.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, the Bucks won and forced a Game 7. Not the
Yep.
Nets. So I called the Nets closing out the series. I was wrong. I admit it. I'm a little bit disappointed in the way James Harden played. I know he shot above 50%, but he also didn't take a lot of shots, and I think he was capable of making a lot. So I think he could have taken over the game, but he kind of chose not to. KD was KD. He shot 50%. Pretty sure he had like 32 points. So no surprise there. However, on the Bucks side of the ball, I was a bit surprised with a few performances. I was surprised that Chris Middleton was the leading scorer. I think I told you that Giannis could potentially score 50, but instead, Chris Middleton scored 38 and Giannis scored 30. But it was a good cohesion. They both shot really
Gian-
well too. They both shot
Giannis
above
also hit a
50%.
three.
He did. That he did. Um, but Giannis played. He had 17 rebounds too, so I think that was pretty key. If I'm not mistaken, they bullied. the Nets in regards to rebounds. So down low, I think that might be crucial. I don't know what the Nets are going to do because they have a small lineup right now. They don't really have a true center as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I believe they're putting KD at power forward, and their next biggest guy is Jeff Green. So that could be a problem.
They have been. I thought they've been putting Blake Griffin at center.
That's true. I forgot about Blake Griffin, but I don't think that's a true center in my opinion. So
No, he's not. Yeah, but I'm just saying he's been
yeah,
playing the role for them.
I it's a tough task for a guy like Blake Griffin who's reigniting his career to have to try to out rebound a combination of Giannis and Brooke Lopez, let alone Chris Middleton also being around the basket as well. So
Mhm,
I can't imagine that that's going to go well in Game 7 either. Um, but that's fine. I think the Nets just need to play their own game. They need to find 3-point shots. They need to find mid-range jumpers and probably play away from the post on both offense and defense. Try to keep it away from the middle. Um,
mhm.
Drew Holiday played really well. He had 20 points as well. Played really good defense too. I believe he was guarding James Harden for a bit. Um,
That's something they're going to need to keep happening. 'Cause remember, before the series even started, even though Harden came back from injury, I said Drew Holiday would be the one guarding James Harden because he's their main facilitator and playmaker. So that'll disrupt their offensive flow. And Holiday is like such an incredible defender.
I would like to note though, outside of Drew Holiday, Middleton, and Giannis, let me just double check here. The rest of the players on their entire team combined for only 15 points. So I think you're going to need better bench performances too. Pat Connaughton or I don't really expect much from PJ Tucker in fairness to him. Brooke
Yeah.
Lopez though, another one. And I would also actually like to give shout out to PJ Tucker because he was plus 30 on the court when he was on the court in points for the Bucks. So all around pretty good performance from the Bucks. I do want to see more from their bench. I also would like to note for the Nets that I think that Jeff Green has been really good for them, but this last game he shot 2 and 9. So you're gonna need your role players to play better without Kyrie being around. And I mean,
Yeah.
like we can't overstate James Harden needs to play like James Harden. So
Yeah, but the Bucks they also need it, especially since they're going to be playing in New York, in Brooklyn. They're going to have to really put in work to try and contain Joe Harris. They can't have him sniping away from three.
who?
If he starts sniping away from three, it's going to be a big problem.
Who?
Joe Harris.
Who?
I know he hasn't necessarily been all that impressive this series, but man, like all year, he's been a sniper. When he is drilling his threes, he makes the Nets seem much more impossible to stop.
He's been pretty good before the playoffs, but I don't know
Yeah,
where he is right now. So as far as I'm concerned, not worried about it. Until
all
further
right.
notice.
The
So
thing, you better hope it stays that way.
so what's your prediction for Game 7 tonight?
I predict the Brooklyn Nets winning.
You know what?
Just because out of everybody, like in both series, I think Kevin Durant's been in these situations more frequently than anyone else. And then second would probably be James Harden. But I believe Kevin Durant he'll be able to pull through this. Giannis, I mean, he's been in a pressure situation, but we yet to see him take that step and elevate. I think Kevin Durant is going to be motivated and take over this game. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a perform from him that's similar to what we saw in Game 5 if it really comes down to crunch time.
I you know what? I'm gonna be different, and I'm going to pick the Bucks tonight. I originally
You
had the
want to
Nets in
bet
the
on it?
finals. I might be potentially down for that.
All right. Yeah, this is what the bet's gonna be. What's it called? If I win, then I don't owe you wings anymore. And if you win, I owe you wings and a drink.
Okay, all right, you got it. I mean,
Yeah.
here's my perspective. I think Giannis has been in this situation plenty of times from a perspective of he's lost in this situation plenty of times. So I think that there might be a boiling point where it's like he's not going to let it happen again. Um,
I don't think you've been to a game 7 before.
I just mean the brink of elimination. not
Oh,
necessarily
yeah,
Game of Seven. So I think that we're gonna see a different side of him, and I'm not gonna say that he's gonna be the leading scorer because I think that Chris Middleton seems to play really well on the brink of elimination usually too. So I want to say that
yeah.
Chris Middleton's going to play really well and smart. So maybe Chris Middleton leads the team in scoring, but Giannis plays really well too. But that all is dependent on Drew Holiday showing up again too, playing good defense, and then PJ Tucker. Obviously, I would say if PJ Tucker can hold Kevin Durant to less than 35, they have a good chance of winning. Um, Anything
When it
over
comes to that
40, I think it's going to be very tough.
fourth quarter though, Giannis has to guard him.
Yeah.
Giannis has to guard KD. Mhm.
So yeah, I'll go Bucks, but I'm gonna say by 5. I think it's gonna be a super close game.
Yeah, I think so too.
All right, so let's talk about what series should we talk about next? You want to talk about
The
Sixers or
Sixers.
all right? Yeah, let's.
Sixers, of course, and most importantly, after I don't know, you guys probably saw my rant in our reaction video in the week on the Sixers. I almost ended up coming on the show with another rant because Embiid. I'm convinced this guy loves aggravating me sometimes because he was showing some flashbacks to Game Five last night, but thank God the Sixers won. Trey Young was pissing me off with all those half court shots. He's just such a talented point guard. But the Sixers were here again. Game 7 in the Eastern Conference semifinals. Last time we were in this situation, we barely lost. We lost by once in a lifetime impossible shot by Kawhi Leonard, who traveled on that shot, but neither here or there. Um, but even before that, we've won in this situation before. Way back in 2001, Allen Iverson, the Sixers versus Vince Carter and the Toronto Raptors. So we won one, we lost one. So if we're gonna follow the pattern, we're supposed to win this one.
So
Philly, I believe in you. Doc Rivers, I was really glad because I don't know if you noticed this, Ev. I think part of it because Ben Simmons got in foul trouble, but Simmons, he pretty much didn't play a lot of the fourth quarter. So I think Doc finally decided to stop being stubborn and realize, yeah, we I need to focus on the win.
yep.
Tobias Harris came out and balled and was to be our number 2 scoring option behind Joel Embiid and Seth Curry. Once again, he showed up. Like other than Embiid, we can say Seth Curry's been the most consistent player in this series for the Sixers. So those three guys are pivotal. I love Ben Simmons, but honestly, in terms of on the offensive end of the ball, I'm going to say he's been practically useless for the Sixers.
I enjoyed every second of watching John Collins dunk on Joel Embiid the other night.
Oh, I'm sure you did. I'm sure you
Enjoyed
did.
every second of that. I am
Yeah.
surprised though that he was able to put his hands out with his big wingspan though and pretend that he wasn't touching anyone in the altercation and then proceeded to shove John Collins straight into the stands. Even though no one talks about that. I'm not gonna lie to you, I was a little bit confused that he was able to do that, but Jokic isn't allowed to slap the ball out of someone's
Yeah.
hands without being ejected. So that blew me away a
Eh,
little bit, but you know,
they still got the double tag because I mean when they were down on the floor, Collins was the one who shoved and beat or kicked him or something.
yeah.
I mean, I'm just glad that no one got ejected for
Embiid
that.
likes to
But
play like he's not a part of it though, like he doesn't trash talk or anything.
No, he usually owns up to it in other places. He just did last night because he just to not risk getting ejected.
Yeah. So I
But I gotta say the officiating though for both sides it was very poor. Both teams were getting frustrated with the officiating.
yeah.
Like I saw some unfair calls on both ends. Well, missed calls. Like Embiid, he was getting a lot down in the post, and then on the other end for the Hawks. I think they were getting a lot of unnecessary turnovers by
Yeah.
bogus calls from the refs as well.
So I'll go straight into what I think the keys are for each team winning. Uh, I think the Hawks are going to have a tougher time. I think we both think that the Sixers are going to win either way. But if the Hawks want to win, they need to play as close as they can to the Game 5 Hawks, where it was Gallinari putting up 15, Lou Williams putting up 15. Trae Young had like 40. John Collins played pretty well. I think he had around 20 points. You
Mhm.
just need all of your players to play up to their expectation. Like Gallinari is good enough to give you 10 to 15 every game, and so is Lou Williams. Kevin Huerter too is another one. He needs to hit a few threes. They just need to play like themselves, and I think that can get them a win. I mean, even if um, Embiid's at his peak, and let's say Seth Curry's playing his best too, I think that you still don't match up well against the Hawks if they're all playing good basketball, just because they have such a deep team. Um,
Actually, but the key is to what was the big key though to their win that you articulated was the fact that Tobias Harris played so poorly, and Bede and Seth Curry, like they both of them had near 40-point games, but Tobias Harris was the missing key. So if they can lock down Tobias Harris and contain him, that could be the key to their victory as well.
I'm not worried because Tobias Harris is gonna put out a good choke job uh, the next game, so not concerned about that. Um,
No, no, he's not. I'm gonna pray.
for the Sixers, I just think you need Seth Curry and Embiid to play like themselves. You need Tobias Harris to play good basketball, even if it's just slightly above, even if it's 15 points. He cannot put up 4 points. He cannot put
No,
up four.
no, hell no. 15 points, no. 20 points, 20. Tobias and Steph, 20 points, nothing less.
If
Embiid, 30.
I think that you can do just fine with Tobias giving you 15, as long as you have Tyrese Maxey or Korkmaz, one of them giving you 10 or more points. I think ideally.
No, I'm sorry. With Tobias Harris's contract, no.
Oh, for what he's worth, he should be doing way more than that. But
Yeah,
I'm saying just to win this game. And Doc Rivers needs to play to win, not to play for heart. Um,
keep Ben Simmons on the bench in the fourth quarter.
I said it the last podcast, and he finally listened.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
uh,
He-
I want to pick the Sixers, and I'm probably going to pick the Sixers. But Doc Rivers is very. It would be very Doc Rivers esque to lose Game 7. Um,
I also don't want this loss for Doc Rivers as well.
no, it would because it'll start to diminish his coaching profile,
It's
I
a,
guess, in a sense.
yeah. I also don't want you rooting for the Sixers in the series because I feel like you're just gonna bring some bad mojo and make us lose, and just so you can laugh at me later.
I'm rooting for Ice Trey, baby.
Yeah, are you rooting for the Hawks? I just want to be confirm this. Are you gonna root for the Hawks or the Sixers?
I'm rooting for the Hawks.
All
But
right, thank you. Now I feel better.
I want you to understand something. The last time we talked, I told you it would be really funny if the Sixers blew another lead and lost the game. So I'm gonna say it
Yeah.
again. It would be hilarious if the Sixers blew another lead and lost this game tonight.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Honestly, if it does happen, then I wouldn't be all too surprised if the Sixers choose to trade Ben Simmons and put him on the trading block.
Ben Simmons needs to go to San Antonio. I already said it,
Yeah,
and I'll say it
Greg
again.
Popovich can teach him how to play basketball.
100%. Him and DeMar DeRozan.
Oh God, I forgot about him.
Yeah, I think most of us have. It's okay. So, do you have anything else you want to contribute to that game, that matchup?
I'm running through the six with my woes. We're going to the please 76ers conference finals. If you guys make it, I promise you I will be in attendance for one of those games. Yep. Now I'm good.
You're done? Okay, good.
Yeah.
Looks like he's not going to be buying tickets anytime soon. All right, so let's talk about the Jazz and the Clippers. Um, what before we even say anything, we didn't think we would be talking about what happened last night and in general. When we heard that Kawhi was hurt and its series was tied 2-2. I mean, no one in this, I don't think anyone in this world could have, or anyone who watched basketball could have expected what happened. No one
Most
expected the
specific,
team to play better without Kawhi Leonard.
and specifically, Terrence Mann, a guy who averaged 7 points per game, gave you 39 points.
Three pointers.
Wa- once again, you've heard me say it before. I've been saying it for years. Role players make a big difference um for winning basketball. They make a huge difference.
I I want to talk about Mike Connolly first. As you
Hmm.
remember, I think about a week or two ago, I said, do you think Mike Connolly's return is going to affect the Jazz lineup in a negative impact because they're not used to him in the lineup as of recently? And I believe you said no, and I said maybe not severely. It was his first game back, and he shot 1 of 8 and played 30 minutes. So every other player on that team shot above 48% except for Donovan Mitchell and Mike Connolly. Donovan Mitchell, I can't like Donovan Mitchell had 40 points, so he put it all out there. I'll say that, but he cannot sit there and get frustrated late in the game and feel like the game's over with a couple minutes left because you're on the brink of elimination, man. So you got to do whatever it takes to win. So if you're down 12, even if you're down 50, you just got to try to get back in it. Even if there's only 3 minutes left, do whatever you can. It's this is before you get sent home for the next 5 months till next season. So it's it's do or die.
We
And
also got to point out this is the second time we've seen him do this. Because last year in the bubble against the Denver Nuggets in Game 7, the same thing happened. I don't remember the play exactly clearly, but it was somewhere within the last 30 seconds of the game. I think the difference might have been like 1 or 2 points. The Utah Jazz, Donovan Mitchell didn't get the ball. The team missed a basket, and then Denver they started a fast break. Donovan Mitchell, he didn't even bother getting back on defense. He just stood there nonchalantly, frustrated, getting ready to walk off the point. But mind you, the Nuggets, I forgot who it was. I think it might have been Will Barton missed a wide open layup, and then Rudy Gobert grabbed the rebound, and if you see the play wasn't dead, then Donovan Mitchell wants to run back in action and calling for the ball. He didn't get the ball. They lost, and he ended up laying flat on the court on his face again.
yeah,
Now that's an example right there. If he did not give up in those dying moments of the game, maybe it could have ended up differently, despite the fact he had a monstrous game that day too.
um, I thought that was particularly frustrating. You saw him on the bench shaking his head in the final minute of the game, and
Mm.
I understand you have 40 points. It's frustrating that you're not getting enough help, but yeah, I mean, when you're the star player of the team, you're also naturally the leader of the team. So everyone's
Yeah.
gonna look at you, and if you're down 10 points, 5 points, whatever it is, they're gonna look at you and be like, all right, what do we do? Where do we go from here? So you can't go, and I won't call it quit because he had 40 points. I won't say that he quit on the team necessarily, but you got to pump your team up and you got to figure out a solution and not just roll over and die. It's not gonna work. Um,
Yeah, we start calling you a superstar, and despite what happened, I still believe he should be called a superstar.
yeah,
But it's gonna come with expectations. Go, do you see? LeBron was in similar situations when with his frustration,
yeah.
been accused quitting on his team. The past has happened with Kobe. These are the expectations that come with being a superstar. They're
If you
gonna be looked at under a microscope.
if you want to be called a superstar, you're going to be treated like a superstar in regards to criticism too. That's the way it is.
Yeah.
Um, because I thought it was really interesting. Like he shot 12 of 27, and I'll read stats off for a second. I mean, uh, Royce O'Neal shot 8 of 12, so he shot above 50%. Bogdanovich shot 5 of 11, had 14 points, so slightly under 50%, not much. Gobert shot 5 of 6. He was playing with 5 fouls though for a good portion of the game, so that was making him play a little bit different. Mike Conley shot 1 of 8, absolutely awful. I already established that. Um, and then Jordan Clarkson shot 8 of 16, and Joe Ingles shot 2 of 4. So almost everyone on that team shot really well in regards to their shooting. It was more defensive issues or um, poor shooting from Mike Conley and a couple bad decisions by Donovan Mitchell. I do want to point out, though, I think one of the biggest things that no one talked about in regards to the Jazz losing last night, because I think Gobert got a lot of hate more than anyone else, was while Mike Conley shot 1 of 8, it was the person he replaced that suffered the most for the team. Because if I'm not mistaken, he got 26 minutes last night. Joe Ingles only played 18 minutes. And Joe Ingles was playing most of it, like at least 30 plus minutes almost every game, if I'm not mistaken, before that. And he shot 2 of 4. And he only got to shoot the ball though 4 times. He had 5 points. And so
Hmm.
I personally would have played Joe Ingles more than Mike Conley just because he was in the lineup more and he knew what was happening within the series. He faced the Clippers for 5 straight games before that, so he knew what was coming and he knew what he would have to deal with. While Mike Conley was coming fresh off and he hadn't played the Clippers at all this series.
So, yeah, no, no, that's absolutely valid point. I'm curious. So, would you say what would you consider to be the primary reason on the Jazz's end for their loss? Would you say that it was a loss from a coaching perspective?
I think Quinn Snyder does deserve part of the blame, but I primarily think it's more geared towards Mike Conley because here's my thing: Joe Ingles scored the ball pretty well, but at the same time, with all those shooting stats of most of those guys shooting at 50% or better, it comes down to defense. And Joe Ingles is a phenomenal defender. I mean, Mike Conley is a pretty good defender too, but if you're shooting 1 of 8 versus someone who's going to be just as good, if not a better defender, and score the ball way better than 1 for 8, it's clear to me that Joe Ingles should have been on the floor guarding either Terrence Mann or even Paul George for a little bit because I know he played a little bit on Paul George. But
But couldn't you argue that right there that blame should
that
go
is
on
on
Quinn
Quinn Snyder.
Snyder?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
because he's the one controlling the
Yeah,
rotations.
I agree with that. So I can't understand even if it was reversed where I would have had Engels playing 30 minutes and then Connolly playing like 15 to 18 minutes, um, which isn't what happens. So I am disappointed because you have a guy who is tied with your other counterpart as sixth man of the year, and then you choose to only give him 15 minutes on the brink of elimination. That's completely unfair. I
Yeah, but you could also quote me on this. Like for one, never personally, despite how well the Jazz were doing, I still did not see them as a team that could get to the finals. Because my thing is, despite them having like a superstar, Donovan Mitchell, just rose to superstardom, and having a well balanced team in terms of play styles, guys off the bench, defense, shooting, all of that, is essentially spaced out role players. Like I think Donovan Mitchell, like he needs to have like a definite. I'm not gonna say superstar, but all star level offensive player along his side. Like I'm gonna say maybe like a Chris Middleton, CJ McCollum ish, a level player for them to really be considered like NBA Finals worthy. And as for the Clippers now, remember I said before, despite the fact that they were not looking as dominant this year as they were last year, in terms of the roster, what they have, thought they had a very deep roster. They have talent, but they were just lacking in execution. And could also point out maybe it was the schemes that Ty Lue's been coming out with, but it was essentially a lack of execution. And I think it really showed like the depth that they have in that roster. Like
yeah
even though I rooted against them against the Mavs team. I never diminish like the potential, like what they have, like the weapons they have in their arsenal. Like the Clippers, in terms of what they have, they're a solid basketball team, and I think there's oh, well, I'm not going to go that far because Kawhi's out. But if Kawhi was there while he was there, I still consider them a definite title contender.
I I think with the Jazz, even if they didn't get a superstar, if they had like a star player, um,
Yeah,
or
like an all star,
or even if
like
they
a borderline all star.
I was also thinking if they were able to bring in a couple really good bench players, like other potential six men of the year, like finalists. I mean, not necessarily someone who could put up 15 off the bench, whatever. And then you're able to slide Jordan Clarkson into the starting lineup with Donovan Mitchell and go from there. So because you just need more scoring at this point. I mean, you had guys shoot above 50%, but they were barely taking. many shots outside of Donovan Mitchell. He took like 30 shots. So you need
Mhm.
someone who's going to be willing to shoot the ball more. Um,
Yeah.
in regards to the Clippers, I mean, yeah, I'll give a ton of credit to Ty Lue because I'm usually a Ty Lue hater. I think that he made a lot of good adjustments that made it work. He ran a really small lineup, which I didn't expect to work for the starting lineup. He didn't run the center. He had his traditional Batum, Morris, Reggie Jackson, Paul George, and Terrence Mann. And
Yeah,
I mean,
they played a really fast-paced style. That's why they went small.
so like I'll give Terrence Mann a ton of credit. I mean, how can you not? He had 40 points.
Yeah,
Um,
for a guy, a second-year player who averaged 7 points,
yeah,
like that's a phenomenal.
yeah,
And then of course Reggie Jackson, he's just been so consistent,
and
like ever since that Mavs series.
I think that people should give Ty Lue credit not only for his coaching schemes, but he's very motivational when it comes to talking to the locker room. So, if I'm not mistaken, Paul George said that Ty Lue gave him a lot of confidence going into the first game without Kawhi Leonard, and Paul George had like 40 points right after that. And I assume something similar happened with Terrence Mann and Ty Lue before the sixth game. He inspires confidence. He tells people, he lets them know that any given night you can put up a big game. It means nothing. The previous games, anything else in the series, it means nothing. Um, so I thought that deserved credit. I mean, Reggie Jackson's been spectacular. Paul George was good. Terrence Mann was good. Pat Beverly deserves a little bit of credit because he's barely been playing the last this series and the series before that, but he had 12 last night too, playing like 25 minutes. So I thought that was good. Um, you had a lot of guys but that's the thing. You have a lot of guys that could step up at any time, so that's really important in
Yeah,
success.
I'm not gonna lie. I don't know about you, but I still think this is a very bad look for Kawhi Leonard. I don't know how many people are saying this, but because I mean, since last year, like after they folded, a lot of people are saying Kawhi Leonard definitely top 5 player, like his skills and abilities, but as a leader on the team, like it's not there. Like the guys, he doesn't make them like better on the court or like psychologically either. Like the fact that the matter is, they seem to play more confidently, more loose, and more effectively without him out there on the floor,
I
including Paul George.
I think I think that could be a sense of I think that there's a sense of confidence when he's on the floor that okay, we could win this game because we have one of the best players on the planet with us. But at the same time, I think that it inspires fear in the rest of the players. They're afraid to take shots. They're afraid to play their own game in fear that they're not giving the ball to their star player. Even if it's not just him, even if it's just the fact that he's on the court, like whether he's saying something or not, I think it just inspires fear for the rest of the team. They don't feel like they should play like themselves or they should do certain plays. They feel like they have to feed the ball through them.
Yeah, it was also interesting because I don't remember if it was this series or the Mavs series, but then when he took the some dumb shots and Rondo got up in his face at the end of the game, like, I think, were you thinking, Kawhi? I don't know. I think there's some kind of disconnect between Kawhi
Yeah.
and the Clippers team because there have been reports that, like, with Kawhi Leonard, he's like really indifferent on the team. Like, he just kind of keeps to himself. He's like, I'm gonna go out there, put up my points, or defend or whatever. I was like, oh, you guys just go do your own thing. Like, he's kind of dismissive like that. So I don't know, but I just gotta point this out. You know where I'm gonna go. Got if it was LeBron James in that situation, he got injured and his team and this happened, what would the narrative be? Oh, LeBron doesn't make teams better. Teams are better without him. And I'm not just gonna say LeBron. Let's call the same thing will happen to Kevin Durant as well. So,
I think you can make
it's interesting how Kawhi he doesn't, despite the level that we know he plays at, except for the fact that he folded last year, he really doesn't get the scrutiny that like a LeBron James and Kevin Durant gets.
I think you can even go as far as to say even if he's not in the same caliber, I think you can go as far to say that Giannis would be held accountable too if he didn't show up.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
so I think that like if you watch the Bucks and Giannis got hurt, let's say, and Middleton started scoring 40 and that team started winning every game, everyone would be pointing straight to Giannis and being like, "What the heck?" So I think
I think part
Kawhi
of it
being
too, because
quiet,
I realized he's Kawhi's also the only one out of the names that we mentioned that never won a regular season MVP.
yeah.
I don't know what if that really. has anything to do with it.
I like Kawhi is just more quiet around the media and everything, and I don't know if that's why he doesn't get held as accountable, or it's just because he plays really good defense. But I do think that it
But
was
even that is a
interesting
load of
how
crap.
much better they looked without him.
Yeah.
Because, and I mean, he looked great. It wasn't anything about his specific play. It's just the whole team's chemistry looked way better without him.
Yeah, like the team around him, they seem better without Kawhi there,
Like I said, I mean, like you
i-
said too, they just looked way more confident. I mean,
including Paul George.
yeah. And I I don't know if that's something that's with Kawhi, like that's on Kawhi, or if it's something that's on Paul George, where we haven't seen him feel that comfortable since the Pacers when again he was alone. So I don't know if it's something that Paul George needs to be one of the only stars on the court to facilitate, or maybe Paul George just needs to be the leader around a bunch of role players. Because he seems to be a pretty good leader. I mean, you saw when Terrence Mann dunked on who did he dunk on? I believe Terrence Mann went and dunked on someone. I forgot who it was, but Paul George is running over him, hugging him, like cheering him on. I think that's Kawhi wouldn't do that. He's
Yeah, he
and
wouldn't.
that's not to roast him. He's a quiet, more introverted guy. But like your teammates need that. They need to know that they're doing stuff right, and they need to feel.
Yeah,
You need to feel better about themselves, feeling like okay, I can move forward, and you know my star
yeah,
player admires what I just did and appreciates it.
yeah. Like LeBron, even in the regular season, when he sees his teammates make an epic play, he's the first one
Yeah,
jumping out of his chair, patting them on the back. Kevin Durant
yeah,
done the same thing, even for his co-stars and his role players
yeah,
around him. Giannis does like that. That's what you do. You're a team. You're a unit.
yeah. Um, yeah, Giannis does it a lot too. I, th- and I think that's where a lot of them get their appreciation too. Like you hear appreciation from all those guys' teammates about Giannis, LeBron, KD, whatever.
Even
Yeah,
also Anthony Davis.
no disrespect to Kawhi, but you don't hear his teammates praise him constantly about the person he is in the locker room or anything.
Yeah.
They
In fact,
praise his performance.
I don't remember where I think I will watch in First Take one day. I heard someone bring it up. I'm not sure what the source was, but in the locker room, I don't think like people like Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell, I don't think they really vibe with the whole load management thing.
No, I don't
I
think so.
don't they really didn't like it, and like watching him get spoiled essentially.
Yeah,
And like I also got to bring up his pass to the Clippers, the whole drama with Uncle Dennis basically holding like a bunch of organizations hostage, Toronto and
yeah.
I believe the Lakers hostage and the Clippers. You pretty much yeah, they said, "Oh, you have to get so and so, or else I'm not gonna join your team." Like, this is not looking good for Kawhi. Like, oh no, maybe going to the Clippers might have been the biggest mistake he ever made.
I'm all for players having more control of, like the team than they previously had, but there's got to be a fine line that's drawn where, you have to trust your general manager to put pieces around you. You can have a star player come in and say, "Hey, I think this guy, I vibe really well with him. I have great chemistry with him. I think he might be worth bringing in." But you can't just go here and say, "All right, well, I'm only going to play these games specifically. I only want these guys on the floor with me, and if not, I don't think it's going to work out." I mean, you can do that, but you have to have success around it. And if you're getting eliminated in the first or second round of the playoffs, you're going to be held accountable for it. You made those choices. That's what you wanted. So I I liked this Clippers team. It's and instead of instead of it looking like a superstar team that was performing below expectations, it looks like a team that's feisty, that wants to play hard offensively and defensively and do whatever it takes to win, minus Kawhi. So
Hmm.
it's a completely different look than what it was.
Yeah.
Um, it is what it is. I like Kawhi, and I called him the best player in the playoffs a couple weeks ago, before KD had his 49-point game too. But the way his team performed without him. Maybe it was just the inspiration that they gave him when he was injured or what, but it looks too consistently good those two games.
Yes.
So, I out of curiosity, I want to hear your take. If you could name, oh, what do you think is if you could rank every team left in the playoffs from 1 to 6? how would you rank them?
One to six. Okay. Um, number one, I'm gonna say I'm gonna say the Suns number one.
I agree.
And then number two, I will put the Brooklyn Nets. I was I was trying I was considering putting down one just because I think out of all of them, all the teams, Kevin Durant has is the best player. But because Kyrie's not there, and honestly, their bench players aren't as strong as before all of the trades happened earlier in the season. I had to take that into account, but I'll put them at number two. Number three, I'm honestly gonna say I believe the Sixers. I'm just gonna considering in terms of roster and what they have. But now, if we're gonna, but in terms of like whether they're gonna play to their expectations or not, because no one's ever questioned like the talent that they've had on the team.
Yeah,
So, but I'll put them at, I'm just taking into account like who I think is the best assembled team.
yeah.
So I'll have them at three. Number four, I'll have the Clippers. Number five, um, I have the Bucks, and six the Hawks.
All right, I'll tell you my list. I have the Suns at number one too. I agree with that. Um, I'm gonna go off of what I see right now, performance-wise. So I want to put the Nets at number two, but also they're missing Kyrie, and outside of Kevin Durant, that entire team's performing below expectations. So it's hard for me to put the Nets necessarily at number two without just saying Kevin Durant's number two. Like he's your entire team right now. So it's difficult. I'll put this is all off performance too, not the players. I'm gonna
Mhm.
put the Nets at number two for now, but I'm gonna put the Bucks at number three because I don't think anyone's necessarily performing below expectations. Giannis and Chris Middleton are playing pretty consistently with who they are. Um, I'll put I put the Sixers at four. Um, I do think they're performing below expectations, but they have a lot of good star power, and I think that they're one of those teams that can turn it around in an instant. So, and then number five, I'm gonna put the Clippers. As much as I liked the way they're playing, I don't know if it's just the matchups that threw off the Jazz or if they just played, great basketball. So I don't know if that could easily just turn completely around against the Suns. I need to see a little bit more of them to have more confidence in that team, like with Terrence Mann and not necessarily Paul George. I feel like he can do whatever it takes, but Terrence Mann and like Marcus Morris and Reggie Jackson, I want to see that consistency in the next round. And then the Hawks last. And that's not a knock against them. It's just they're the weakest team out of the six.
Yeah.
They have a good all-around team, but there's outside of Trey, there's no true star players on that team. So,
Yep.
um, but I think that the Bucks, Sixers, and Nets are all pretty interchangeable between two, three, and four. Like,
Yeah.
depending on how they play in each of their games. So, like, if the Bucks win tonight, that then they're clearly the number two. Um, but if they lose tonight, the Nets stay number two, and the Bucks could slide depending on how bad they play. Um, but I do think the Suns are easily the best. They just look the most consistent, and they've had the most fluent basketball. Everything's looked calm. Everything's looked calculated. There's nothing that looked like a mistake in any of their performances. Like they did everything for a reason.
Yeah. Like they honestly, it's been a while before I could say I seen a team that I think is practically flawless.
Yeah,
Because like even looking back at like the Warriors team, even with Kevin Durant there, like they've always had one big flaw is like having the man in the middle, the center position, having the guy to protect the rim and rebound. So if Draymond was in a way forced to step up to that role as the power forward, but he's 6'7", so there's only so much he could do. Kevin Durant used to help him a bit, the rim protecting and stuff, but he play out on the perimeter. But they have solid perimeter play from Chris Paul and Devin Booker, and they also have solid post play and off the ball play, rebound, rim protector from DeAndre Ayton as well. And then off the bench, they have like role players. I believe Cameron Payne. He comes off the bench, right?
yes.
Yeah, they have depth. They have shooting guys to get to the basket. they still take mid-range shots, which I'm a huge advocate for.
I
I think taking the mid-range shot out of the game totally is nonsense. They get to the basket, hit the threes, hit free throws. Guys that score off the ball, got they could create their own shot. I think if they're just and their defense inside and outside, they can play fast pace on fast break offense, and they can excel in the half court sets as well. Like I really can't point out a flaw in that team.
I think that when you talk about DeAndre Ayton, he's been pretty consistent, and that's really important. That can't be, you know, talked about
Rep the
enough.
islands.
But I think between Chris Paul and Devin Booker, they either both show up for a game, or if one of them doesn't show up, the other one does. And I think that's a really good balance. So, like the one night
Absolutely.
Devin Booker was shooting really bad, but then Chris Paul came and had 37 points. So like if you're able to keep that balance where okay, if this guy doesn't show up, he'll show up. That's fine, and then I'll let my bench and DeAndre Eaton do the rest. That's perfectly fine. It's a good balance, and they're still inputting the pick and roll too, or finding open shots for Booker, even if he's not playing well. So it's not instead of it like what it used to be, where Devin Booker has to have 60 to 70 points to have a chance of winning a game. You have guys around him like Chris Paul and DeAndre Eaton who are able to help him if he has a bad game and keep the pace. And they're playing great defense too. I mean, no one talks about that, but their defense has been really good. So
Hmm.
it all starts with Chris Paul and Monty Williams. So
Yep.
um, credit where it's due. They've been a great on the court coach and off the court coach. So
Hmm.
I like that team, and I expect them to make it to the finals. Even though it'd be cool to see an underdog like the Clippers make it too.
It's funny. Out of all the teams, they've literally been the only ones wrapping up their series like that.
Yep, like it's nothing. So
Yeah.
and I think that needs to be talked about too. They have like 2 weeks of rest right now in them. And when the Clippers wrapped up their series yesterday, the Bucks and Nets will wrap up their series tonight, and then Hawks and Sixers on Sunday. So like the Clippers, they're going to be on short rest, while the Suns have had 2 weeks of rest. And people look at that differently. I know some people are like, well, now they're going to be ice cold because they haven't shot and played in the actual game in a while. Or some people are like, well, they'll be well rested, so that'll be really good. I think I prefer being well rested. I think
Yeah.
you can make adjustments all you want in practice and just be ready. Take shots, put up shots, be comfortable, and then go into the game. But now you got a week and a half of rest in it too, so that's big for them.
I think what people forget about the rest, just because we're watching sport of basketball, how the movement looks so fluid, we're not seeing that guys get tackled and stuff like in football. This stuff is taxing on their bodies, all the running and jumping and coordination from their knees to the ankles. Like I bet you when these guys go into the locker room, they're icing up their bodies and muscles, get ready for the next game because there's a lot of muscle fatigue that happens in basketball,
Yeah.
specifically like in your legs. So guys, they may not always be fully if full on injured, but there's a lot of muscle soreness and fatigue that kicks in these drawn out series. And then when you have veterans like Chris Paul, who also had a shoulder injury, like that's only gonna help him. Like rest is very important.
So outside of Kevin Durant, who do you think's the best player left in the playoffs now that Donovan Mitchell's gone?
I this one is kind of hard for me. I have two names that jump to mind. I have Devin Booker
And Joel Embiid, go ahead, say it.
and Joel Embiid. Yeah, but the thing is, well, I'm gonna say just specifically based on like postseason play, like just not overall season and everything like that they've done. I think Ben Embiid is a better all around player, but in terms of like their performances and the impact that they're having on the team, and then the moments, in key pivotal moments at the end of games, Devin Booker, he's really been like that guy taking over games at the end for his team. Like you can see, he's literally lifting them at the end of games.
I I want to say something controversial and not go off of points and stuff and say Chris Paul is the second best, just
I
off
was
of the
also
impact
thinking
on
of
the
that.
rest of his team. Not
Yeah,
necessarily the amount of scoring that he does, but it's difficult because I had Devin Booker and Embiid in my mind too. I mean, a touch of Giannis too, and
yeah,
Chris Middleton, like both of them, but like neither of them have. I mean, Middleton's played really well, but like he still comes off as, you know, not nearly as good as Embiid in my opinion. So
yeah. You're not gonna want to hear this, but I've actually officially decided in my mind. To me, Joel Embiid is a better basketball player than Giannis Antetokounmpo.
I hope to God that it's going to be the Bucks versus the Sixers in the next series because
I hope so too.
I will put money down that the Bucks will win.
You know, I'm definitely game for that.
So, the other question I wanted to ask you is, who do you think do you is the best coach left in this
All
in the
right,
in the
let me go through
playoffs?
the names.
And if
All right, there's Doc Rivers, Steve Nash, Monty Williams, Ty Lue, um, what's the Bucks coach name again?
uh Budenholzer, I believe,
Yeah, Mike Budenholzer and
Nate McMillan's the Hawks coach.
Nick McMillan's the Hawks coach. I am gonna say Monty Williams. Monty Williams or Ty Lue, actually.
I agree. I think those are the top two. And if you were gonna hit me with Doc
Actually,
Rivers, I was gonna end
no,
the recording and not
no.
talk to you anymore.
If I said Doc Rivers, it would have been solely based on like overall resume and stuff.
Yeah,
I think if we're looking at overall like everything, I'm taking Doc Rivers. But in this moment now in the playoffs, he hasn't been coaching his team the best compared to the other coaches. As a matter of fact, I'm putting Ty Lue at number one because of what the adjustments he's made without
yeah,
his star player
I agree.
Kawhi Leonard.
I agree.
Mm.
Now, who do you think's the best coach in the East remaining?
In the East remaining,
Yeah. So you got Budenholzer, McMillan, Steve Nash, and Doc Rivers.
I'm gonna say I, I'll have McMillan one and Doc Rivers two.
I am so glad you said that. I do think that for the way the Hawks have been playing, that their coach deserves recognition.
Yeah, because I mean, we got they're a less talented team, and also gotta point out the fact that both of us we've been criticizing Doc Rivers in this series with how he's been handling Ben Simmons. Like, if I were to say Doc number one, it would be essentially because he just decided to bench Ben Simmons off of one game. We don't know if he's gonna do it again um tomorrow night. So, that would be me being present at the moment. I'm putting him at number two. Me personally, I don't think Steve Nash belongs in any of these coaching discussions at all. Not yet, at least.
Yeah, so I'll go with Nate McMillan, number one, and then I'll go Nate McMillan one, Budenholzer two, Doc Rivers three, Mike D'Antoni four, and then Steve Nash five.
I thought we were only doing head coaches.
Oh, well, I mean, essentially. So let's be real. I don't know how much Steve Nash specifically is putting in. Like, I'm not sitting there on their bench, but I do feel like Mike D'Antoni has a very heavy influence on that coaching and within that team because Steve Nash learned everything on the Suns from Mike D'Antoni, and
Hmm.
then James Harden learned a lot of stuff from Mike D'Antoni. The only person that didn't play under Mike D'Antoni was Kevin Durant and Kyrie, but I mean they both were taught to buy in through James Harden and Steve Nash. So I feel like it all comes down to Mike D'Antoni, and they're playing similar styles to what Mike D'Antoni used in Houston too. So they're using a smaller lineup. They're having a power forward play center, and they're having like a stretch small forward playing power forward. So they're playing very because PJ Tucker was kind of their big man in Houston at one point. So
Yeah.
it's very similar basketball um, because we didn't want to use Clint Capella for no reason. We won't
Well, he
talk about
also
that.
got traded. Well, he got traded.
Well, yeah, they forced him away. Um, Even though that was the reason that they had a chance of beating the Warriors until they blew that and shot like 0-27 or something ridiculous. Um, we won't talk about that though. Is there any other topic you wanted to discuss?
I will be in Wells Fargo Arena. That's all I got left to say.
Yeah, maybe next year we could see it. Um, without further ado, enjoy Game 7, Bucks versus Nets tonight. I have the Nets winning. He has the Nets winning. I want the Bucks to win though. Sixers Hawks Game 7 on Sunday. That should be a great game. I want the Hawks to win. He wants the Sixers to win. Um, I do
Wait,
think the
hold
Sixers
on.
will win though.
Hold up a sec. Wait, weren't we betting on the Bucks and Nets winning? You just said that you have the Nets winning. You said that we
Oh
made
yeah,
the
no,
bet
you're
because
right.
you were
I had the
taking the
Bucks winning.
Bucks.
I had the Bucks
Yeah.
winning. You're right. You're right. I have the Bucks winning, and I'll stay on that. As much as I am nervous that Easy Money Sniper is gonna end my career tonight.
Hold on. I'm gonna point this out though. Any of the stars get injured, the bet's off on either side.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
Um, and then we get to watch Clippers versus Suns on the other side. Early prediction: I'm gonna go Suns in 5. Um, pending Ty Lue's adjustments after the first 2 games that the Phoenix take in Phoenix.
I'm gonna say Suns in 4.
Okay, I thought you were about to say Clippers, and I was about to put my headset down and walk away.
Oh
Um,
no, that'll just be me, just trying to protect my heart.
yeah,
Because I don't want to have to root against Chris Paul.
I'm happy either way that we're gonna get a finals that's either gonna be Paul George or Chris Paul because they both deserve to be there eventually. So,
Definitely Chris Paul, because he's the one that's really
well,
running out of time.
Chris Paul definitely deserves it more, but I wouldn't mind Paul George being in the finals either. I wouldn't hate that.
He'll have more years and
Yeah,
more time than it. Chris
yeah,
Paul's 36.
yeah, he deserves it. I agree. Um, well, if that's all you got, let's wrap it up. Episode 5 in the books. We will see you all maybe for a couple short clips throughout the week, um, especially after both game 7, Saturday and Sunday, maybe Monday or something. Um, follow us on Instagram, SEVelocity. Got some more polls coming for you. Probably ask for your opinions on thoughts on tonight's game. Like, comment, and subscribe. Anything else you want to finish with?
Nope, he said it all.
All right. You guys have a great week and enjoy a fine night of basketball.